There's the camera. So we are off to do the mining tour. Safety first. Oh, we're blue. Oh, gotta adjust it. What?
The survey stake.
Oh.
Right there, that's the survey stake.
Yeah.
Pretty dark.
Yeah, surely it is. It won't be that dark. We got some lights in there. But.
Okay.
So this here's the Colonial. This mine was opened in 1907, so it's on the older side of the mines around. Because mining in general here started in 1903. So yeah, we were mining here for a long time. The natives were mining longer though. They were here about 2,000 years before we were. They were mining up copper around the area for about 6,000 years, and then they discovered the silver here, and they've been mining that for about 2,000 before we came in and kicked them out.
Sadly.
Yeah, weirdly enough, yeah, I don't know. Although they still knew where there was more silver to be found. They always did, because whenever the traders would refuse them bullets or whatever, or refuse to trade with them, they say, all right, well, we'll go up to the hills, we'll make our own bullets. So they were making silver bullets
Nice.
for a very long time before we figured out, you know, silver bullets are just as good as lead ones, albeit more expensive, but they didn't care. What else are they going to use it for? Not to mention.
Watch for bats. I just saw one fly straight in.
Yeah, there are bats. We share a cave with.
Ooh, nice and cool in here.
Oh yeah, very much so. Oh wow, there's some head trauma waiting to happen here.
Yeah, make sure you duck.
Yeah.
You should brought that new flashlight on.
Not far too. There is a bat.
Yeah, I was gonna say, he just kept going.
Little fella.
Very.
Far too tall to be a miner.
Oh
Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah. I'm fairly short. I'm not hitting my head yet. I'm built like a Voyageur, short and stocky.
You will later.
Uh-oh, we're at an intersection.
Oh yeah, we are. It's the choose your own adventure part. I forgot to mention, during that little 30-year span initially, they got 1.25 million ounces of silver out. There he goes. We had another bat. Anyway, that's a lot of silver. Both in numbers, but also if you know about silver mining, 1.25 million ounces in one small mine where they went like maybe 200 feet down, astronomically huge. Like the amount of silver that they were pulling out of the ground here was unheard of anywhere else in the world. Like in the American West, you would get like sandstones with silver in it, and you'd get like a pretty low-grade powder. But here you were getting basically pure silver metal, like something close to, I think the highest was something like 1,470 per ton, 1,470 ounces a ton.
Wow.
Which is pretty damn near pure silver.
Yeah, that's good.
So did they have tracks?
The wooden stuff you see around from
Oh, yeah.
about 100 years ago.
It's still here, eh?
The reason they're not rotted to hell is that there's enough asbestos in them to kill a horse. So nothing.
Oh, great. Just touched that.
Well, not asbestos, but arsenic as well.
Yeah, arsenic and all that.
Yeah, both. But yeah, it's pretty tough to eat wood that doesn't rot.
Yeah.
So nothing does.
Holy, we could get lost down there.
Not really. It's a giant donut.
Okay.
It's. I mean, yeah, you can totally get lost.
Uh-oh, going into a restricted zone.
Oh yeah. You know. Here we go. yeah. No, it's the dynamite that's killing them. Yeah, it gets
Yeah, watch your heads.
Yeah. A little shorter. Oh yeah. No, for sure. It gets a little
rocky there too.
Yeah. There we are.
There you go, a little taller.
Machine guns and all. Yeah.
Machine guns. Might as well be. So, to control their dynamite, or to try to, you would use this drift round. So you drill it out. A bunch of different methods to do that. I'll talk about in a second. You'd be drilling out your holes. You'd put dynamite in them. You'd rig up your fuses to explode, light them all, and then run away. And no, they weren't doing the whole modern mining thing of like, set up your
that.
yeah. People were down here and still drilling while you were blasting because you couldn't afford to waste a second.
Wow.
So, yeah, this had to be blasted in a very particular manner. So it had to be your central blast, your helpers, your easers, your backholes, and your lifters. Now it had to be that way because the central blast would sort of open up your core hole. Helpers would expand it, your easers would expand it some more and ease some pressure from the walls and the like. Then your backholes would keep your back all nice. That's what this is the back. I don't know why they called it that, but I think it's an old from like England or Germany or something. They called it the back. But anyway, that stayed here. Oh, excuse me. 4 or 5.
It fit 4 people in that.
Oh yeah. Yeah. You gotta fit them one leg in, one leg out like this. You have to get in it.
Oh my
And you'd
god.
be leaning out the side and grabbing grabbing the wire or whatever. Holding it out.
To pull you out.
Yeah.
That's wicked.
Holy.
Yeah, that was some tough stuff.
With all their tools.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, later on they were using those, but
Today's miners are wimps.
exactly. Back in this is a 1930s model. This thing here.
Mm-hmm.
But in 1914, none of this would have been here. So none of this bar or arm or anything keeping it up would have been here. It would have just been the top. So you'd have one guy holding this thing. Well, probably 2 guys holding it up and trying to keep it steady and pressing it into the wall. Then you'd have one guy trying to keep the angle proper back here, and you'd have the throttle and the on and off for the compressed air. So, yeah, that was a tough job. Then they were forced to care in the 50s when the workers' rights movement sort of came in. And
Safety unions came into play.
yeah, exactly. And so the jackleg drill was basically the crown jewel of mining at the time. And as soon as it was invented, pretty much the world over adopted it immediately over the drifter because the jackleg was just so much better in every way. It had a harder bit, it had higher RPMs, it was just a better system. And still run by compressed air, so they could still use the ragged chutes. That's why it was in operation for so long. But the best thing about the jackleg drill is that it eliminated the vibrations on your hands. Because, I mean, while dust mitigation is important, a lot of people had their hands starting to rot off after a certain point because the nerves in their hands would die, their blood vessels would close, and their tissue would be considered dead by their body. So, yeah, the pressurized jackleg would have reduced a lot of that recoil and saved their bodies pretty significantly. So if you were a young man back in the day, they didn't want to train you very much. So you'd have to sort of earn your keep. And it was another initiation ritual. If you were young, you would come in, they'd say, here's your scaling bar, go into the mornings or after blasts, and tap the roof and listen for anything loose. If you heard anything loose, you'd have to pry it out. Now I do know that there is one spot that is loose that we keep there on purpose. Right there.
Oh
If you
yeah.
heard
Oh
that sound,
yeah, different sound.
you'd pry that out. Because you wouldn't want that to accidentally fall on somebody's head while you're blasting. So you'd pry that out.
Keep hitting there.
We might find more silver.
And no, you'd stand at a 45 and you try to chip in and then you go hit.
And then have it land,
Pry
yeah.
it, yeah. The young man would figure that out. Would have been what,
Yeah. Probably when he was running.
Yeah. So originally when they were invented, probably 1905, they would have been these big old hulking devices on the surface, but around 1930s to 1950s-ish, they were like this, very little, and used for exploratory drilling in your mine head. So yeah, you'd be going ahead of your drillers and essentially marking out places that you've cored. So these are your cores here. You've seen them around. Yeah. Probably grew up kicking them around too. But yeah, these cores you get out. So you take a look. If they looked somewhat valuable, if you were a mine head driller, you would be looking at this and saying, well, is there anything useful there? It doesn't really look like it, so you'd toss it. But if there did look like there was something of worth, then you would cut it in half and send half off to your assay lab. Probably.
I don't remember.
We haven't moved it, so I hope it was. Unless we had some ghosts or mole people in it.
Maybe it was here.
Yeah, I don't know. Who knows? Anyway, this is a 1-ton ore car. See, there's a mouse nest in there.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. She had a litter not too long ago.
Yeah.
And I think they're gone now, probably out somewhere. Anyway, yeah, so this would hold a ton of ore, and I mean, it doesn't really look volumetrically like a ton, but this rock is pretty heavy. So, yeah, a ton gets made up pretty quick with how heavy the rock is. But anyway, yeah, you'd be pushing these probably on this level straight out the adit and over to the concentrator, which again we'll talk about in a second. But yeah, to fill these, you'd have to use your shovel, like we talked about before, or you'd use one of these. That's your ore chute right there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's the mouth of one. That means there's probably a level up there somewhere, another drift.
Yeah.
Probably a stope up there, actually, if they built one. So they'd be running this down. And of course, you'd pour your ore in, you'd wheel this over, up comes your barricade, and down in goes your ore. That didn't always happen that way, of course, because nothing can ever go right in a mine, or ever, really. So sometimes it got jammed, and so you'd need to send your children up there with their scaling bars, and they would try to pry out all the stuck ore. And that would often end them up at the bottom of one of these, with a ton of ore on top of them. Literally a ton of ore, not just the expression. There's only one piece. Oh,
Stoper.
yeah, it's a stoper. So these, kind of like a plugger in reverse, you would, you'd have this set up, and you would try to brace it to have it start a hole, and then once you're done starting the hole, you're kind of good, and it just does its own thing. The younger guys who aren't very experienced working these didn't know that, and so you can tell who's new versus old in the pictures of these, because the young guys would be like hugging up on it, and they'd be showered in dust and water and stuff. But the older guys, you can see them doing this to get it started and just sort of walk away afterwards, because yeah, they didn't want any horrible infections that they often got. So yeah, stopers got paid a lot of money because there's a lot of occupational hazards with it. Obviously, you're drilling above your head, and loose rock could fall on you at any moment. And on top of that, before these were wet drills, they were dry, and so you'd be covered in dust all the time, so you'd have to hold your breath essentially until you were done drilling, and then even then you'd probably still breathe in a lot of stuff. And then they became wet drills, and so you'd be constantly showered with near freezing water, and you're already pretty cold down here, so a lot of hypothermia was going around in the stopers, a lot of lung infections from all the water being around, so bronchitis, and pneumonia, and many others. And usually the cure for that was taking a pint of your blood and saying, see you later. That's often what Dr. Dunning did around here. To be fair, that was in his medical textbooks as the cure for everything. So if you didn't know what it was, which he often didn't, because who could be bothered to test you out in the middle of the bush? So he just said, well, I'll take a pint of your blood and I'll see you later. Hopefully you'll get better. Essentially just shutting the person's immune system down so you don't get your symptoms anymore for a while. But eventually the infections become so bad that you just die because your lungs will be rotten out of your body. So yeah, it delayed it for a while anyway, but anyway, yeah. So they probably saw this, that calcite earth right there, and calcite earth right above your head there, and they probably thought there was a bunch of silver up there. And they might have been right for the first 10 feet, but past that, their prospects looked pretty grim, so they just stopped. Actually, somebody was probably trying to continue it right there.
Yeah.
And then somebody was like, oh no, I don't think we need to keep going. And so they stopped. But yeah, so if this was richer in silver, they would probably have kept going up and then over a little bit to find the other drift just above us. And then this would have been a raise, which is just a giant hole between two levels, essentially. And that's a lot more reliable than trying to use your chute, because your chute could get jammed all the time, and you don't want to waste people's lives if you don't have to. So they'd often just dump all their stuff from one car to the other down this big old hole, and that kind of worked out. We all know and love the wonderful electric bulb. Been using it for the better part of a century now. But mining has only been using it for, I think, since the 50s. But yeah, before then, they had these. These are carbide lamps. You can see them in the museum if you haven't already. And you might have seen, if you read the signs, I don't blame you if you didn't, there's a very small one at the very bottom of the case. These would use calcium carbide and water, and that's where they got their name, carbide lamps, from. So you put that calcium carbide in the water, you dissolve it in that little thing there, put it on the stove to heat. That would make acetylene up top here. And then you would open this valve and strike it, and away you went with your lantern. Now they needed these because when you, turns out when you compress air with water, it sucks all the oxygen out of it. So yeah, unfortunately the air that was powering the drills was super deoxygenated, and so it was pretty hard to even light a match or a candle down here. So they needed to switch to one of those. But before then, before the drills, so the years, 1903 to 1914-ish, so they would be using one of these. They would have been sperm candles, so they would have smelled terrible, but this one's obviously not that. So I'll show you what it looks like. So you can see why they needed their indicator mineral. Pretty hard to see anything down here. And everything looks the same, even if you can see it. So yeah, this is not exactly ideal. I mean, it would be a little lighter, because you'd have like 20 other people with candles down here, bare minimum, on the same level as you. So it wouldn't be that bad, but still not great. And the lower down you go, and the more drills you use, the worse the air quality gets, and the less oxygen there is. I mean, candles are already pretty fragile. They need a lot of oxygen to operate. And unfortunately, they were pushed over the edge far too often by blasting down here. Oftentimes, the blasts would create a huge pressure wave throughout here, and pressure waves are prone for delicate candles.
Yeah.
To blow them up.
Everybody's left in the dark.
And you'd be stuck like that for however long it took for someone to figure out that you're missing and then come find you. Oftentimes, miners had a pretty good idea of where they were in the mines.
Yeah.
You kind of had to. I mean, you were drilling tunnels, for God's sake. If you didn't know where you were in trouble. So oftentimes they would eventually try to find their way out. But if you weren't sure, if you weren't 100% sure where you were and what was where, then you would try to stay put as best you could against the wall like this to prevent yourself from being split in half by a ton of ore flying by at like 30 kilometers an hour.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, especially if it's downhill, it's not stopping for you.
Yeah, the cart's going.
Yeah, exactly.
You feel the warm air coming in.
Oh yeah. Imagine when it's plus 40 out, it feels so good out there.
Yeah.
One summer, it's 35 degrees and it felt awesome.
You're a fog up, bro.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I'm already starting to fog up.
Yeah.
Cool glasses. Oh,
Sorry,
bye,
bats.
mine. Sorry to disturb you, bats.
You can go back to what you were doing. There's a lot of bugs, I'm sure. To
Ooh, it's warm out here.
Oh yeah.
Check that out. Man, I'd love to paddle that. believe it or not. From my grandparents. In place back then. Right,
Turn this light off when finished.
oh, there you go.
Oh, there you go.
There we go. Keep this light on. Very cool.
Shut this door.
Yeah. There, that's better.
Holy.
That's very cool. This spotlight. Chair. Very cool. There's. There's what they look like without the light on.
Wow. J.H. Trudeau. And there's still liquid in it. Dare you to drink it.